I'm Sarah Blake at Zoe Studio. This is phase 3. Today we're focusing on 3 steps: cleaning up your drawing, isolating some flat shapes with your pen tool, and then we're going to also isolate your line work. Oh yeah, I forgot. Also make sure to refer to the PDF to supplement these videos, because there's going to be some stuff in there that's a little easier to follow on paper. Now that you've gotten your drawing scanned into your computer and open up in Photoshop, I always just like to do a preliminary cleanup of my line art so that it's ready to play with color and texture, and I don't have to worry about smudges or anything like that. I often get cat hair on my drawings when I scan it. So we're just going to clean that up. And all you're really going to need to do is use the eraser tool and utilize your levels. So I'm just going to show you where I've already started using the eraser tool by command clicking on this original line art layer in my layers panel. I'm going to go over here to my erase tool, and you're going to go to, I always like to use a soft brush, and set my opacity 100 and my flow to 100. And I'm just going to zoom in here and show you what I mean. So you've got these sort of gray discolored areas, and I'm just going to go in and by hand just touch it up. So you go over here, I think I have a little fuzz or a hair that got into my scan. I'm just going to go around the whole drawing and clean it up. And this is particularly useful if you have a drawing like mine where there's some negative space, so you're going to want a stark contrast between your drawing and the negative space. Another quick way to do this is go into your adjustments. So make sure you're selected right here in the layers panel on your line art layer. Go into Image, Adjustments, and Levels, or Command L. Now, I'll show you how this affects your drawing. This little handle right here will make your black more intense, and this edge will make your white more intense. So I always just like to bring my black up a little bit, my white up a little bit, and that'll just automatically get rid of some of that gray haziness around my edges, and it'll make the process a bit quicker and seamless for you. And now we're ready to go into the next phase of locating our flat shapes. Now that we've cleaned up our drawing, it's always helpful to block off the flat shapes of your drawing so that you can easily select parts of your artwork further in the process. So to do this, we're just going to create a new layer behind or under your line art layer. And we do this by Command-Shift-N to make a new layer, and we're just going to call it Flat. Now you're going to use your pen tool, a very powerful and awesome tool that you're going to want to get a handle of if you're new to this. And so I'm just going to zoom in here with my pen tool to my line edges and start laying down some Bezier points. And this just takes practice if you're not used to it, and you just sort of drag your edges so that they smooth out. And if you mess up, there's always the almighty undo. So if you don't like that, Apple or Command Z, and you can just do Option Command Z to keep going backwards even farther. And I'm just going to go around my entire drawing. And we're done. So now you're just going to want to use a little precision to meet those endpoints. You're going to see the little circle when you hover over it. And there you go. You have your completed path, which you can see if you bring up your Paths panel, and you're going to see it cut out. So make sure you're on your new layer, Flat, which we've just named, and you're going to want to control click just on your screen there and go make selection. and I always just like to set it to 0. You can feather the lines if that's your aesthetic preference. Just gonna hit 0, and it's gonna create the little marching ants there. And I always just use the paint bucket, and let's make a purple bat. I like purple, especially purple bats. And just bam. So you're going to see it shows up as purple in your layers panel. Now, in order for you to see through the line art and see your purple background, select your original line art, and up here in the layers, layer mode, go from normal and go to multiply. And that'll make the whites transparent. There you go. Now you've designated your solid shapes. Now you can go even deeper. You can, you do the same process to, for instance, cut out the belly, cut out the feet, cut out the wings, this weird little ear shape, and you can go crazy with that and just cut out more detailed shapes so that you can select them later on in the process. So, all right, now let's isolate our line art. When you have this flat shape designated, it makes it really easy to just color in and paint in a more natural way. So if I right click, or if I command click on this flat layer, you'll see the marching ants, and it's just already cutting out that shape. Now if I create a new layer above that, and we'll call this crazy paint, select a new color. Let's do green. It's going to be really ugly. And control click and just go create clipping mask. And this is going to basically cut out the background of, cut out the positive shape from whatever you paint. So we're going to go onto your brush, and let's just make sure that opacity is set to 100. And just do a big sweeping brush stroke. So there you go. That's the whole brush stroke, and it's mapping to the shape that you just cut out. Another reason why I like to have my flat shapes cut out is if you just double click on your flat shape layer, I just like to play with the color overlay option. It's a really quick way to just drag around your selection and see what colors you like on the fly. And it's, you don't have to use the paint bucket, and you can sort of drag and adjust as opposed to testing and then refilling, testing and refilling. So this is a powerful tool to do that just quickly. Often I like to separate my line art so that instead of it just being a big shape like this with black and white pixels, it's just isolated black and gray pixels so that you can easily work around the line art and color it as solid, etc. So to do this, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you're just working with a desaturated layer. And you can do this in your adjustments. Go to hue saturation. This is just a really quick and dirty way to do it, and just drag your saturation all the way down to gray. Now we're going to want to use our channels to do this next step. So go into your window, channels, and that brings up your channels panel. Make sure you're on your line art layer in Photoshop, and you're just going to command click on the RGB channel layer and command shift I, and that's going to just select your dark pixels and create a new layer, command shift new, and we're just going to call this solid lines. And our foreground color we're going to make black, paint bucket, or just hit the G key and just paint bucket that sucker in, and there you go. So it's double black because we have our original line art and then our solid pixels. So to show you what I mean, just double click on the solid lines layer you just created and go to color overlay. We'll do it red so that you can really see the contrast. So now you can easily just experiment with color in the same way we just learned to adjust your flat shapes. And this is also really cool for when we start layering in textures, because you can do the same sort of clipping mask. We're just gonna clear layer style, paint, I'm gonna do pink so you can see it, and then create clipping mask over your solid lines and a big brush stroke, and there you go. See, now you're just only coloring on the solid pixels you just cut out using your channels. Step 4 is going to be the most fun step in this phase. It's all about playing, experimenting. This is where you're going to want to switch up all your colors. You're going to want to lay in some of those textures that you've created and captured on your camera. You're going to want to just, experiment with form, maybe rotate things around, cut things out, move them, wallpaper them. Just have some fun, and hopefully you're going to have a couple of different versions of really cool stuff that you've made.
Is it true that there's no wrong way?
Yes. Now that you guys have the basics down, I want you just to play around. You also have my source file, so you can see how I did the same. I've made these 3 versions, and the colors vary quite a bit. But the first thing I realized once I got things on the computer screen was that it actually made a lot more sense for the bat to be upside down. I just liked it better. It looks like he was maybe hanging out in a cave. And I just like the composition better and the way it felt when I added in the Skillshare tag. So you guys you're going to have a fresh set of eyes when you get on the computer, and that's a really cool thing. You often can't see your drawing in the same way once you start adding in solid shapes. It changes the composition a bit. So now it's time to play. One tool you're going to want to get familiar with in Photoshop for use with your line art and also exploring your textures and experimenting with that are your layer blend modes. And these are found up here at the top of your layers panel. And let's explore multiply first. Multiply is a tool that's a blend mode that's gonna make your whites transparent in your drawing. So to show you that, let's just create another layer called paint right under your original line art layer, and let's just go to your paintbrush and draw a big paint smear like this. And you can see this even though it's behind your line art layer, because your line art layer is set to multiply. Now to show you what I mean, let's set this to normal, and then all of a sudden you can't see the parts of that paint smear that are behind this selection of your original drawing. Alright, so you're going to want to use this this multiply feature, for instance, if your artwork that you've scanned in perhaps has color and you don't want to make it a solid pixel selection. And you can just basically skip step 3 and set your layer to multiply, and you're all set. Now the other main blend mode that I use a lot is pretty much the exact opposite of multiply, and it's called screen. And that's just going to make your dark pixels transparent. So let's basically invert our background and our artwork. Command I will do this. It's just the invert tool. So now we have a white bat with white lines, and instead let's just set this layer to screen, and it does the same thing. Now you can see through those black pixels. And so those are your 2 primary, what I think are your primary blend modes. And play with those with your textures, but also they're very useful when you're just setting up your basic structure using your main artwork. Working with lots of textures that you've hopefully captured in phase 2 is going to make the digital part of this way more fun. And this is a good time to just show you my personal little library that I've been collecting over the years of just crazy stuff I've snapped on the street. This is just one of a bajillion folders. And it's mostly just city grunge and wood textures and corners of graffiti and weird tree bark and all stuff I've kind of just seen as I've been traveling around the world over the years. And it's almost kind of a way of scrapbooking digitally because you're going to know exactly where your textures came from, and it's a kind of a way of infusing your art with a lot of your own personality and adding a lot of character to your art. So we just learned about blend modes, and I'm going to show you what I mean about using blend modes with your textures. So let's go into version 2 of my bat. And if you see in this adjustments folder, I've got a couple textures. This one is using screen, which we just learned about. So you can see these little like white flecks. That's because the white is showing through, or the black is invisible and the white showing through. And then I used a couple of these crazier textures. I think these are some cement textures that I've played with the hue of. So let's just experiment with our blend modes, and that's really the only way to do it. You just sort of see what happens when you switch up the blend mode, and as you play, you're gonna sort of have a better sense of what each one does, and just sort of play around and try things out. And you can see when I turn it off, this is how it affects the artwork. And so ultimately I decided soft light looks the coolest and gave me the effect that I wanted. And you can just kind of keep layering in different textures. They're going to each add a little different look to your art. So there you go. That is playing with blend modes and now adding your textures. There's one more thing I want to tell you guys about Photoshop wise, and that is using your layer adjustments. These are all these guys in the adjustments folder that I've created, and this is just a personal preference of mine. I like to create a whole folder of layers that affect my composition as a whole. So this whole block of stuff affects my bat, which I've created in another folder. I tend to like my subject matter in one folder and all my adjustments in the other. So you can find all these sets of layer adjustments in your layers panel, and then you go to new adjustment layer, and there are all sorts of different layers that affect different things. Vibrance, for instance, it's going to create this new layer, and that is going to make your art more saturated or vibrant. And these are just sort of sliders that you can use, and the cool thing is it's not permanently affecting anything in your actual pixels, and you can turn it off and get back to your original. So I like all of these to be fully editable and in separate layers. And layer adjustments, since they're just settings, are also pretty low in terms of affecting your file size. So it's a great way to have a lot of flexibility and go back and forth and change your mind and experiment. You guys have made it through this entire process, and I want you guys to have fun with it. That's really going to come through in your artwork. Now you have this digital image, and you can use it for wallpaper, wrapping paper, rugs, scarves, textiles, your website, printing posters. You'll work a lot faster. Clients will love you. It's just you've already got this awesome piece of artwork in a form that you can use in a multitude of spaces. There's no right way to do it. These are just some skills that hopefully you teach yourself your own workflow, and you build upon these skills and take your drawings and continue making tons of awesome digital art with it.